Okay, so I have something to share. And here I am back in my sleep t-shirt. I'll be right back. Okay. Here's what I want to talk about. Yesterday, when I was trying to assist somebody, or actually not really assist them, offer them some insight around how to move through what they were saying they were stuck in. When I was saying be present with your emotion, this person was like, I am. My emotion is always here. I'm always crying. And they couldn't quite understand what it meant to be present with their emotion, because every time I would reiterate that it was the state of not resisting the emotion, they would say, I'm always in the emotion. And so I wanted to demonstrate or illustrate or try to explain it to the best of my ability what it means to be present with the emotion. Because, of course, we're in this healing process, we're acknowledging whatever, validating whatever it is, accepting that it's there, that exists, and being present with the emotion, with the feeling that it has been lodging it into us. So being present with the feeling that has been lodging into us might sound weird if you've been having that feeling all along. I've been low-level sad. I've been crying. I've been angry. So how can you say that I'm not being present with the emotion? Okay, so let's talk about what presence is. Presence is the state of being. So when you're in presence, you're not thinking about the past. So you're not doing that validating thing anymore. You're not thinking about the future. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're not doing this so that there's peace or freedom or something else in the future. You're not trying to make it be different. You're not beating yourself up for it being there. You're not acting like it's inconvenient. You're not telling a story at all. You're just being. So if you need to do something, it's observe. Allow. With no resistance, meaning like act like it's a 5-year-old screaming uncontrollably. And you have to be with that 5-year-old. Now, some people would shun their 5-year-old for screaming uncontrollably. But this is when you take that 5-year-old and you be with them and you hold them and you hug them. And you just hold their hand. And you just do it from that space of knowing that it's okay. Because you know that 5-year-old is going to move through that emotion, right? As the adult version of you, you know that 5-year-old is going to move through that emotion. It's not going to stay screaming forever, right? It will subside. We know this. So we don't need to rush it or stop it or say it's wrong or label it or tell a story about it. Just be there while it's there. And this is love. So it's kind of funny because it's like, we have this idea of what love is. Love is an action I do. Love is putting you before me. Love is considering you. Actually, love is just being. Love is who we are. Love is what we are. So a lot of us, because of the experiences that we've been having on earth, in lack, in suffering, have closed our hearts. So our hearts aren't fully open. And that's why we feel a lack of love. That's why we could even think that love is painful. It's not painful. The lack of love is painful. Or the fear of thinking that you're not worthy of love. Or the fear of not feeling your own presence. Those can all feel like love hurts. But that's not actually what love is. That's the absence, or that's the separation, or that's the it's only a game you can play, because you can never not be love. You can only hide it from yourself. You can only tell yourself a scary story about what's happening. You see? It's like, so all you're trying to do is just like be with all of it, so that it can kind of come into this place of, oh, actually, here I am, okay. This 5-year-old screaming uncontrollably is going to eventually realize, oh, I'm okay in this moment, right? Like, all my needs are met. So energy, everything is energy. And when I talk about being present with a feeling, the feeling that's lodging whatever in, think of it in terms of energy. Here's how I know that it works that way. I've put it to words, but how I knew to put it to those words is because I knew how energy works. I can feel it, right? And so just pretend this is a wave of emotion that you've attached a meaning to, so it's a feeling that you're experiencing in your body, right? It's energy. And it's in your body. It's probably coming in this loop way, like, right, it's happening. It kind of feels like it's cycling. You're in a loop. This energy needs a 0 point to be free. And the 0 point is the open heart, is the love, is the presence. That's the place where it's going to be able to move through you instead of keep cycling in you. So what resistance looks like when you think you're feeling the emotion because it's there and you know about it, and what that could look like is, here's the wave of energy, and you feel that energy, it's there, it's pressing on you. You know it's there. So you think you're present with it, but what you might not realize is that thought you're having, that this is bad, this is scary, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This is their fault. I want this to be over. This is not the way it should be. I might feel this way forever. I'm scared to feel this. I don't want this to happen. I can't do this. This is somebody else's fault. Somebody else should deal with. I need someone else to do this. I need help. It's not wrong to need help. I'm just using an example of what could be the resistance that is keeping you from actually being present, even though you think you're present. So those thoughts are going to be resistance. So that's going to stop that wave from reaching the place where it needs the balance in the presence to let it move through you. So being in victim consciousness is a block to doing that. But it's not wrong. Because if you feel in victim consciousness, there may be a part of you that needs to feel like a victim. So that's the feeling you have to be present with. And like we said, it doesn't last forever, whatever feeling it is on a wave, so it is going to move along. But also, presence doesn't do it so that it moves along. You see? So it seems like it's this delicate balance, and it is kind of, because it's this place in between two extremes. But you can get there. You can trial and error your way through it if you need to. You can just do it a little bit at a time, for a moment at a time if you need to. Like, a feeling is not going to kill you. It's what your actions that you allow yourself to take with that feeling as fuel that could potentially cause harm. So you just make sure that you're going to promise yourself not to do that. You get yourself in a safe space where you feel safe to process the emotion, be present with the emotion. So, working your 9 to 5, and you've got an emotion coming up and it's like pressing on you. It's like, yeah, this doesn't feel like the appropriate place to do this, right? Before I left those kind of jobs, I was like in the bathroom crying a lot, a lot. before I left like the traditional workforce. And it was unpleasant, right? And it was like, I'm losing my friggin' mind, and I'm supposed to fit in with a bunch of people who are just like, we're here to do our jobs, and like, I can't keep my shit together because my emotions are really, really pressing, you know, because I had had so much trauma at that point, unprocessed, no presence. It was a lot of coping mechanisms to avoid and escape. And yeah, there were addictions over the years, and there were avoidance strategies, and there were suppressions, and there was denials. All of it, you know, I've tried and used all of it, not consciously, but that's because we as humans need to develop some sort of way of navigating that. And there are these certain ways that usually happen, and these are some of them, right? So I can totally understand it being confusing when I say be present with the emotion, and you think, well, I'm never not present with the emotion. It's always there haunting me. That you would maybe feel defensive about the fact that I'm saying be present with the emotion. But I wanted to show that distinction in all the sometimes very subtle ways that we can have resistance to being present with the emotion. Just in a thought of, I don't want this to be here. Just in a thought of, I want this to go away, is not presence. Now you're in resistance. So it's really that simple. There was one other thing I was going to clear up in this video too. I forget what it was. Let me pause, eat a couple bites of my coffee slushie, and I'll be back in case I remember it. Okay, so I think maybe it was just that I wanted to really reiterate the importance of allowing ourselves to feel like a victim when it's time to do so. Because that even though that's a cultural thing or a family dynamic that's passed along to us, it still requires us to like process any feeling that we have about that. Feeling like a victim, even if it's just like feeling like a victim to life. It's important to be the one who can love yourself through feeling like that, right? You have to be supportive to you. And then the outside is going to eventually start matching the inside. But to alchemize the situation that you currently have, which is a lot of feedback showing that you're not supported, you have to first support yourself. And so by being present with the feeling of feeling victimized by life is supporting yourself. Eventually, that is going to show up in your outer reality with more support. But if you believe there's no support and you're also not supporting yourself, this is a hologram. So you're not going to get any feedback of support. It's going to look like there's no support. And I've been in that state, and it's scary and doesn't feel good, you know? And can be moved through. It can be moved through. So being a victim isn't something that we want to like shame in people. And, you know, when I talk about it in terms of like our whole culture has a taste of it, you know, I'm not saying our culture is bad. Like, we're in an evolution of humanity. We're just like growing up past the point where we realize like that doesn't have to be how we live. We don't have to limit ourselves in that way. So we didn't know what we didn't know. Now that we know better, we can do better for ourselves. And this is like, you know, there's some growing pains. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I keep losing it. It's like there and then not there. Oh, so the person that I was working with or talking to was really like at a point of like just wanting to end things, and didn't really feel like they had a reason to go on. And I've been there too. I don't mention it often anymore, but like I suffered from suicidal ideation from the age of about 15 to 40. I'm only 47. So it's a long time to want to die every day, all the time. so thankful I survived it. So thankful that I didn't go that route, and that I was able to heal that fully. It's never a thought anymore. It's never a want. It's not, nothing can trigger that into me anymore. But what used to trigger it into me was like anything that would trigger me to remember this feeling of not being supported, of not feeling like life was worthwhile, of not, a lot of things could have triggered that feeling in me of just not wanting to do this. And so this person, it was like, I was saying, like, you could get in the bathtub and just like let yourself cry and be in that safe space, warm water, Epsom salts. And they were like, well, why would I do that? I'm like, oh, usually if I'm going to offer assistance or advice to someone, it would be to someone who actually wants the advice, right? And here was a person who was saying, why would I do that? But we were having this conversation out of mutual care for each other, right? So I say, okay. And then they go on to say that my kids are the only reason that I'm still here. Because this person would feel guilty if they left because of their kids. Like, okay, there's your reason. Because sure, it's not the ideal reason. Sure, ideally we want to do this for ourselves because we love ourselves and we want the best for ourselves. But if you don't got that, if you don't have that as your means of transportation to get through the next hour, minute, day, whatever, then use what you got. If it's your reason is the kids, use that. Then be the example to the kids in case they face the same problem later on. You're now an example of someone who overcame it so that you can be useful to your children. If that's the only thing keeping you here. You know what I mean? Like whatever reason you can come up with is a good enough reason. It doesn't have to be for the purpose of, ideally it would be to love yourself. It's like, okay, well, if you don't have that love for yourself, what do you have love for? What's important to you? Use that. And then something else I would have shared if I had thought of it at the time with this person was something someone shared with me one time. An old friend of mine, he said that at times when he wanted to give up, he just thought, well, if I'm giving up anyway, I might as well stick around and see what happens. And I thought that was really brilliant, So if you just need that to get through the next day, minute, hour, whatever, see what happens. That takes all the pressure off you. You weren't going to be here anyway. Just see what happens. Personally, from my own experience, so worth sticking around because all this stuff can be neutralized and you can get above it. Like it literally just needs to be neutralized, alchemized. You get above it, you balance it out, you understand yourself, and you do that by acknowledging whatever it is in front of you that's there to be seen, validating why you feel that way, what's going on, what are you thinking, why are you thinking that, just like really understand where you're coming from. Not what the right thing is or what people told you, but maybe it is that, oh, someone told me that. That's why I think that. Could be that. Accept that that's the case. It's like, okay, well, that's what it is then. That I feel that way, and that's what it is. And then, how do I feel? Okay, this is how I feel. I'm going to be present. This feeling can be with me. I'm present with this feeling. It doesn't have to be different. I don't have to be different. I'm just observing this feeling. So now I'm the one who's loving this feeling. I'm loving the version of myself who feels this. And that right there neutralizes the energy. You're not pushing against it anymore. You're in that neutral state. Now, if you wanted, you could consider that there's a whole nother side, but you don't need to. You can just stay in that neutral state. If you wanted to swing to the other side of the pendulum, then you're going to eventually have to realize, okay, there's also this other side. So that means there's this middle ground, which is neutral, balanced, 0 point. I can let this energy flow through and be above it and see it for what it is next time it comes around. It's no longer going to loop. Okay, so sometimes you'll get, you'll sit with a feeling, right? And then you'll feel the relief and go on and go through that. And then maybe you'll have like the same trigger bring something up in you again. Because maybe there is another layer of it. Maybe you didn't get to the root of it when you validated yourself. And that's not wrong either. Some people will dig and dig and dig for the root. Some people are meant to find the root on that first round. Some people are meant to do a little bit at a time. And there are reasons for that too, because this is a divine orchestration. So maybe you needed to only heal it like this much so that you'd still have this much left, so that when you encountered that person, you would activate them through your own energy, and then they would be rippled out into a healing. You know, like there's a whole bigger divine orchestration that we don't see from the perspective that we're in. So if you could just allow for that possibility, then you don't have to beat yourself up or think you're wrong for not getting to the root cause on the first round of healing, you know? And, you know, one of the things that person that I was talking to was saying was like, oh, this is like never ending. The healing, there's always going to be something to heal, which was, you know, them trying to justify them wanting to leave or give up. And although it's true that I have found that there is another thing and another thing, I'm not in the mindset of like, this is awful. To me, for years, it was like, ooh, another thing. Ooh, another thing. I know this is a freedom for me. Ooh, I know, you know. And then I started looking at it and calling it like they're gifts. I get triggered, that's a gift to me. I get to see and get free of something that was a misunderstanding stuck in me. I like that, you know? And so then after a while, it was like I'm not always being triggered anymore. Now, you know, there's days, there's a while, there's like peace. And also, even before that state, I was at a state where like I could get triggered, but I knew I was triggered. So there's a state where you're like get triggered and then you're slipped into the trigger and you're totally unconscious that you're even triggered. You might not know it. You're in the mindset that you were at the time that got lodged in you, fully immersed, unconscious, trance state. Because I trained myself to do so, I got to a point where I knew my baseline. So I could detect when I was in a trigger, when I was brought down. So then I would have this dual consciousness. So I would be aware that I was in a trigger. Yes, the energy would be active, but I would be aware of it, right? For the most part. Because I was just brought to the memory of the recent one where I was operating below my level of awareness of wanting love. And that was a tricky one, and I'll go into that in a minute now that we brought it up. Okay, so aware of my trigger at the same time I'm triggered. Then getting to a state of like, okay, there's a lot of peace here. I don't have to be vigilant about being triggered because like I am fully stocked with an entire toolbox of tools to utilize when I need to. So now there's no like, oh no, I might get triggered. There's no like walking on eggshells. There's no, this is awful, I'm always going to have to work. It's like, no, like this is the thing I'm doing now. Later I'll do the dishes. Then I'll go for a walk. You know, like it's just part of life. It's not like this terrible, awful thing to be feared. But I understand why it could seem like it would be fearful that we would always have something to work through when you don't have the tools to work through it. Okay, so let's look at the thing that was that I recently found under my radar. So the reason that that was there was because it was sort of a remnant of the energy of people pleasing. The same questions that I was asking in my emotional body, like how do I get love, how do I be worthwhile, were the same things that were driving me when I was people pleasing. And I had realized people pleasing as a coping mechanism earlier on in my journey, before I had a lot of tools. And before I understood how to alleviate things through the emotional body, or that it was important to do so. So instead of actually fully healing that to the root, all I was able to do was stop people pleasing. I adapted. I never went into the emotion to be present with the emotion of feeling like I needed to do something to get others' love. So that's okay, because that's the level of my ability at that time when I discovered the first layer of that energy. The first layer of that energy was manifesting as people-pleasing. Oh, well, people-pleasing, I know I don't want to do that, so I'm going to just stop doing that, right? Now I'm going to take some of that energy and put it back into me. But not all of the energy, right? Like, because there was still part of me that was still hurting. So that part of me that was still hurting still had that agenda. But now in my mind, I think, well, I'm not people-pleasing anymore, so that can't be an issue. I didn't know yet, because at that time when I dealt with that issue, I didn't have all the tools that I have now. So when I gained those tools, that came back up into my awareness to heal. And consequently, the driving force for me being in a constant state of healing also healed me on a lot of other issues between then and now. So that's why I say use whatever you got as far as a reason to do something. Because even if it's not the pretty pure reason, the most authentic reason there could be, it's your reason. It's the one you have. And it's very well could be the transportation meant to take you from here to there. You know, for instance, when I started my healing process, I was desperate to be loved. I was codependent. I didn't know what codependence was. I just knew that I was having a hard time staying in a relationship. I didn't know it was because I was attracting relationships that matched my inner energy. I just thought, they're the bad one. I keep attracting these bad guys. They fear intimacy. They don't want to commit. They're players. They're liars. They're cheaters. You know? So I was desperate to kind of learn, what do I got to do to be in a good relationship? And then come to find out in my research, I come to this understanding that the way to get there is to love myself. And I was like, love myself? I don't know how to do that, right? And then I was scared and crying actually over the fact that it was me that I had to love me, because all I wanted was them to love me. I just wanted to find someone else to love me, and the answer was to love myself. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? And it's basically you have to do it one step at a time, because you don't just snap your fingers and feel that you love yourself. No, you prove it to yourself over time by doing it every day. And so eventually I did. I earned my own trust back on that I was going to have my own best interest at heart. And so that was the process of learning to love myself, inspired by my want for someone else to love me. That was the only transportation I had, the only reason I had at the time. But it got me to the place where it was like, oh, I don't actually need them to love me. At least consciously I was there. My feelings still were kind of hurt. And it's true that I do need love. As a human being, that's one of the things we do need. But these are all basically stories and mind tricks, right? Because, like, there is a level of connection, even if there isn't the connection that I thought would have felt was ideal, that was full presence, right? Because, like, here I am, like, coming from a state of wholeness and purity outside of Earth. I come into Earth and I now fragment. And so, yeah, part of me still remembers the wholeness of who I am, the love and the presence that I am, and longed for that in my human experience. And that's what would create the experience of me feeling lack in that department. Okay? Okay. Hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, prompt me. You can challenge what I'm saying with something I hadn't considered or something that I want to ponder. I'm open to discussions on these matters because it is fascinating to me, and I'm interested in it. It makes me intrigued to untangle the intricacies of human behavior. What about you?